Hey guys, welcome to Journey of a Joyful Life podcast. I'm your host, Melodie Chandler, and it's great to be here with you again and just starting a new kind of season. I don't know if we're actually going to call them seasons, but just group of episodes where we really focus in on knowing people and knowing stories. And these stories and these people that we're really going to get to know in the next few weeks are adoptive and biological moms who have kiddos with disabilities. And in part of that, we're also going to hopefully in some situations be able to talk to the kiddos that have disabilities and just get some different viewpoints and really spend some time just allowing people to share their story. I wanted to talk a little bit today just by myself this morning about the importance of allowing people to share their story. And before I started this Journey of a Joyful Life podcast, I was kind of wrestling back and forth with what really is the point of another podcast. I mean, everybody has a podcast. You can pretty much find whatever you're looking for on the podcast platform from someone's perspective. And I kind of got a little bit discouraged with that, not discouraged in that I thought that, you know, what I was going to say is already being said by someone else, but discouraged in that like nobody's going to care. And the Lord really impressed upon my heart that this podcast, these stories are not necessarily for the listeners, but also for the people that get to come and speak, for the people that get to share their stories, for the individuals whose lives need to be talked about and shared about in a more therapeutic way. And also just having the ability to understand that the Lord sees and hears us and understands us more than anybody else. And especially in our disability community, a lot of times people feel really misunderstood. And specifically when people feel misunderstood, the defense mechanism that rises up inside of them can be really harmful and unhealthy. And so this happens in any situation, not just in disability ministry or in adults or children with disabilities, but it happens with anybody. It happens in the workplace. It happens just in conversations. I feel like a lot of church hurt. All of these things have to do with feeling, unheard, misunderstood. The time isn't given to really make connections and build strong relationships with people. And when that happens, then the enemy just preys on our mind. And we can so quickly go from, a place of, I think I'm confident to I'm at the pit of who God made me to be really quickly because of someone's words. And there's so much power in our words, and there's so much power in having the freedom to be able to share our stories and talk about it and just have dialogue about our hurts and our pains, being allowed to grieve. A lot of times, especially maybe my generation and generations previous to mine, lots of stuffing happened, right? We don't validate our feelings as much. And now we have populations of people who vomit their feelings. And feelings are everything. And all they care about is expressing feelings. And a lot of times we miss out on the truth of, yes, those feelings are so real. We need to express them. We need to have a space to be able to feel seen, heard, and understood. And then what does the Lord say about that? What does he say to us in those moments of all the feelings? And then living in that and allowing ourselves to grow and become healthy in that. And that is something I'm so passionate about. I truly, truly want people to live their most healthy life, whether that be emotionally or physically and spiritually, especially. But the enemy, I feel like one of his greatest battles and ways that he preys on people is with communication. And I will preach that until I'm blue in the face, that is why we have to be so focused on making time and space to have good communication and to have good connections and relationships with people. And to build those relationships, it takes time. And I think a podcast is a great way to be able to build those relationships because you get to know about someone. Maybe it's not someone that you're ever going to be best friends with or have a actual relationship, like personal relationship with, but you have an understanding of someone. You know about their story, you know their background, you know why they did what they did, or maybe after understanding why they did what they did, you're able to have more grace and love for them and better be able to view what they're doing and why they're doing that, and even be able to maybe have a better way of redirecting them. Not just children, but also in all of our relationships, our friendships, our, um, work relationships, and all those kinds of things, and marriages and all that. And so just having this space to be able to communicate is so important. Also, having the space to be able to grieve what you thought that you were going to have, or what you thought maybe that you were owed, that you should have been able to have. And I was really reminded of this story recently because as I was thinking, like, there's no time to be able to share all the stories, but specifically one story that was so impactful to me in my ministry whenever I was living overseas, and maybe one of the times where I felt the most misunderstood. Living in another country as a foreigner, I feel like if you don't approach that with a lot of grace, then you're probably going to come away even more jaded than just like the normal person. But having an understanding of someone's background, where they're coming from, especially when you're dealing with different cultures, is really important. But I had been living in China for quite a while. It was probably the 5th year I had been living there, and I would say I was pretty adapted to the culture. It doesn't. I don't know. I think is you can live somewhere for a really long time and you still can maybe struggle inwardly with cultural things, or whatever. But there's also a moral line where we have to be loving and accepting of cultural differences. That I think that's really important. But where do we rightly divide the truth? Like, when does something become not a cultural issue and a truth issue, and something that's right or wrong, not just culturally accepted? And not just in foreign countries, but in our own country in America, we have this so much. And even last night, I was listening to a podcast and just reminded, like, the truth is being so muddled right now in our culture of America that even Christians are just being so easily entrapped by the enemy because, everyone's doing it. So we're just going to go ahead and do it. And it's okay that we don't forgive, or that we just say that this issue is kind of gray instead of right or wrong, when if it is clearly lined out as a right or wrong issue, a sin or not sin, then there's no gray. There should be no gray. There's love, there's understanding, there's a heart behind it, but there's still truth. And we can hold on to the truth and still have love and still have the ability to understand someone, but also not allow ourselves to compromise. And so I was in China, and one of my children that I had fostered for quite a long time had been taken away. They had been taken back to the orphanage, and I was devastated. So the grief was super heavy, super hard, and we had traveled from where we were to the city where the little girl was, and it was really far, provinces away from each other. It was kind of strange that we even had this girl in our home because she was from so many provinces away. And she lived in our apartment, so we were very, very close with her. She needed a little bit more care and understanding, but also her cognitive function was higher, and she was misunderstood all the time because her verbal abilities were really limited because of her disability. But her cognitive ability was really high. And so if you didn't understand what was going on or have a way to evaluate that, then she would just be misunderstood. And so over the time that she lived at our house, she went from, like really having no way to communicate to being able to communicate in 2 languages. She learned English really quickly. And I always said that was going to be her superpower because nobody would ever guess that this little girl from this really tiny village in a province would be able to understand English and Chinese, and probably also the dialect of that province. But I wasn't from there, and so I wasn't aware of the dialect, but I'm sure she knew it. So we had gone to her province and asked to have a special meeting with the director of the orphanage. Come to find out later, he was not just the director of the orphanage, but because her city was so small, he was over um, kind of like the whole city welfare. So elderly people, children, adoptions, all that stuff. He took care of all that foster care, um, and so we went into that meeting with the thought that we are going to try to convince him that she could come back with us and like really live an amazing life. And we would basically do anything that they needed from us, like fill out any paperwork. She was already aged out of the system. She couldn't be adopted. And from my perspective, her just like literally rotting away in an orphanage, um, who was going to benefit from that. And so we had a plan that we were going to go in and like very graciously, you know, the Chinese way, take the man to the dinner and talk to him about our heart. Like, this is our heart. And we just really feel like that we'll do anything he wants us to do as long as he lets her come back to our house. And, you know, these are all the things that she's capable of. And these are the ways we can support her. She was getting physical therapy at our house and all these different things. And so I had so much hope. I was full of hope. I will have to tell you, like, I don't know. I can't remember a lot of things about the other things going on in our life during that time because that was so all inclusive of my mind. But when we went there and I was so positive and full of hope, I just knew. I just felt like it's going to happen. She's going to come and we're going to get to take her home. And we went in and the man, she didn't live at the orphanage building. They had put her in a foster home in the city, and we had already been to visit her, and it was horrible. It was really, really horrible. And like, just so my mind when I went to the meeting with the man was not in a great place because I saw how deplorable it was for her. And it had been like 6 months since she had left our home, and she hadn't had her hair washed at all ever since she'd come back to that place. And um, she slept on a board. The person that ran the home, it was just really sad. And there were quite a few kids in the home, like 4, and 2 of them we knew, but she had been in our home. And it was so, so sad. You could tell there was a lot of abuse happening, but not for her. I don't think she wasn't being physically abused because she was very smart. And she knew exactly how to get what she needed to get to, like, kiss up to the lady in the home. And I mean that like in the best, smartest way possible because she knew how to protect herself. Her cognitive development was so neurotypical that she was able to have all those processes and figure out how to support herself in that way. And I could tell she was also protecting the other ones, the ones that she could. Physically, she had a lot of limitations. But the woman who was taking care of them was just a hateful lady. And so we had left that and gone to the orphanage to have the meeting with the man. And I had been so confident, like, the Lord is going to take care of this. We're going to walk in there. And this, I mean, like, what does he have to lose? We are basically going to help him. I had totally like wrapped my brain around how it was going to be so much better for him if we did this. And we had no sooner walked into the room, and I had decided like I wasn't going to speak very much. I was going to let Chen talk, just Chinese man to Chinese man. That would probably be a little bit better, so he didn't feel intimidated at all by me or, you know, just threatened. And so we went in and sat down, and I could tell immediately the man was one of the most evil people I had ever met. In his eyes, you could see it in his eyes. And so Chen started talking, and just explaining like how wonderful she was and we love her so much. And, if we could have adopted her, we would have, because, we loved her, but she aged out before she came to us much later than most of our other kids. And so, and he did a great job of like making it really look like the best option for that man would be to just let us take her home. Like, we'll bring her back for visits, we'll do anything, please, let her come home with us. And I'll, I can still, I've done a lot of EMDR over this. If you're not familiar with EMDR, I've done a lot, but I can still remember exactly how he sat and how he crossed his legs, and there was a cigarette and his tea, and the whole thing is just ingrained in my memory of him basically telling us how foolish we were. We are the most foolish people he's ever come in contact with. And she wasn't worth anything. And he didn't care about her as a person. What he cared about was that if something went wrong, if there was a mishap on his dime or his time, that he could lose his job, his status, his lineup in the whole scheme of things. And there was no way he was going to risk that for trash, is how he said it basically. And I don't, I just remember thinking, I'm sure I can't hide things with my face, but I just remember thinking, I can't believe this is happening. I cannot believe. It was like I was watching something happen. I didn't even feel like I was in the room. And Chen would try, he would say something else, and the man was just like, "You're an idiot. I can't believe another Chinese man is such an idiot." I would just berating him. It was very traumatic. And I remember the man stood up and was like, "Y'all have to leave. Like, I don't have time for this. This is terrible." And I just burst into tears and said, "You do not understand. I love her like my daughter. I desperately want her to come. She needs a family and she needs love where she feels understood, and we can help her with that." And he looked at me with just the most detestable look I've ever been looked at with, and told me how much he disrespected me and thought I was the like sorriest source of a human that he'd ever met, and that I needed to get out of his office and he was never going to talk to me again. And I remember feeling like I had one other situation when I was living in Wuhan, where a really hard situation where a Chinese man had spoken some very terrible things to me, my boss actually, because he was angry that I was leaving the university. And I had never been spoken to that way. Like, I had never in my life, I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine if I had done the things that he said, the horrible, evil things that he had said, that anybody would be deserving of being spoken to that way in a public place. He just berated me in front of like 100 people. And I felt like worse, like lower than a worm in front of my colleagues, Chinese and English, and or foreign colleagues. And everyone knew that what he said wasn't true. I wasn't worried that anyone believed him. I just couldn't believe that he would say that, because we had a really good relationship previous to that. And so when this man said this to me, number one, it reminded me of the man from Wuhan. And number two, I was so angry. I was so angry. I have not ever in my life been that angry. To this day still, I have never been that angry and bitter and hurt and wounded. And he actually didn't do anything to me. He said mean things to me and called me bad names, but he didn't hurt me physically. And truthfully, I could leave that situation pretty unscathed. I didn't. I needed a lot of therapy after I came out of that. But his words hurt me so badly because of who he was referring to, and how he had zero empathy or love in his heart for my sweet girl that I loved so much, that I still love so much. He did not care. He did not care about people. He did not care about his actions. I mean, I don't know. It's appeared to me that he didn't care about anybody, probably not even himself, at the root of it. But that was only after a lot of therapy that I was even able to separate all that stuff out. But it took years and years and years for me to unravel what that little conversation. I spoke with him for less than probably 10 minutes. Um, I would have begged longer, I would have stayed longer, but he didn't even use the Chinese way with us. And, you know, like typically in a meeting like that, it would be very Chinese professional. It would not go that way. But he truly didn't care and didn't love. And I stepped away from that very hurt for my daughter that I loved. And I knew at that moment, this is never going to change if he's in charge. And I started to pray that, well, I'm going to tell you the truth, that I started to pray that he would die. I prayed every day for years that he would die and go to hell. I was like, I think the only way I'm ever going to be happy is if I know that he's burning in the flames of hell. Like, I hated that man so much. I hated him so much because I found out after that situation, over the years that I went to visit her, she stayed in that foster home for a little while. And then after that, she moved back into the orphanage. And the orphanage was so much better for her. The people there actually love and care. And it's in their orphanage, they have younger and older. So it's like an old people's home with the younger children there. And it was a beautiful setup. And even now, I still get to talk to her because we have a good relationship with them, even from America to China. But that's after a lot of healing and a lot of repair. Not with that man. He is still in charge of something in that city, but God placed another man over the orphanage. And that man is completely different, tenderhearted, kind. He has the fruits of the Spirit. I don't know if he's a believer, but I would say shows so much fruit in his life. We often talked about, like, I wonder if he was, but we would never have asked him because our meetings with him were very professional, round table, lots of officials, but he was so kind to us, and he always allowed us to see her, even though he wouldn't let her come out to live with us. We got to take her out to do other things. So through that time of like such hurt and so much pain because of somebody I love, I realized that it is so easy to allow our love for someone and our offense of someone to completely and totally destroy us. I became so hateful towards him. I was destroying my own self. I had no forgiveness for him. I did not want to forgive him. I mean, I literally would say, like, I'll forgive anybody, but I'm never going to forgive him. But it became something in my own life that I was almost proud of. I was proud that I could hate him and that I could have a hardened heart towards him. He deserved it in my mind and in my heart. And had been back in the States for probably a little over a year, and gone to a lot of therapy. But I, I specifically would tell myself before I would go to therapy, I will never do EMDR over that situation because I want to hate him. I do not want to forget how terrible it feels. I mean, I was really in a bad place. Obviously, you can tell. You can think badly of me if you'd like. It's totally fine. But I could not figure out how in the world is God going to actually bring on more justice to this man? Like, how is he going to feel the pain of this that he's caused? And as clear as day, one day in church, it had been coming in my mind so often that I needed to forgive him. I needed to forgive him. And I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not forgiving him. I don't care. I don't care what you say, God. I'm not doing it. And it was, yeah, one day I was so overcome with conviction that here you are, Melodie. You want healing. You want wholeness. You want to love people. You want to encourage other people to love people. You want to encourage other people to stand up for what's right, you know, all the things. But you also want to hurt someone. You want to kill someone. You are committing murder every single day in your heart and in your mind. And for so long, I had been like really proud of that. It's terrible. But I couldn't see it. I couldn't see how much it was destroying me. And I just kept thinking, if I stop hating him, then how is justice going to come? How is she going to be justified? Who's going to fight for her? You know? And I think so many times when we fight for our kids to be seen, heard, and understood, or when we fight for, whatever situations in our heart, we're having to advocate, we're having to do all these things for friendships, for marriages, and all that, we allow ourselves to say, we justify our sin. We justify the fact that it's okay for me to feel this way because of what was done to us. And in that church service, I will never forget being so overcome with the Lord. And his voice wasn't audible, but it was almost audible to me. Like, how dare you think that your hate for him is going to be worse than my actual justice, than my ability to create every single thing in this world. You really think that of yourself, Melodie? You really think that you're so good that your hate in your heart is going to be better than what I can do to make it all right? I will make all things right. Do you trust that or do you not trust that? Because you say you trust it over here, but what is the deal? I did not want to give it up. I did not want to say, Lord, I want him to come to know you. And in the message that my pastor was preaching was just so passionate about, bless those that curse you, pray for the ones who, have brought on that hurt towards you. And I thought, there is no way I cannot. And I truly, I couldn't, but I said to the Lord, I cannot be trapped anymore. I cannot be trapped with my hate for him because it is ruining me. It's ruining everything in me. And Lord, I need you to do it. I don't want to love him, but I need to forgive him. I don't want to forgive him. I need to forgive him. And I just kept saying over and over again until the Lord made it so clear to me, like, you just have to make a choice to let me take control and release it. And then I will help you do the rest. And I mean, that day was a turning point for me. I released it. I was able to release those feelings to him and choose to completely trust that the truth of God's word, that he will make all things right in the end, that his justice will be way better than anything I could ever beam upon him, that it wasn't up to me. What was up to me was my heart, and that's what was going to either hinder or allow his word to be spoken, brought forth, all these things. And it was definitely not overnight because I still struggled so many times. But I did at that point start allowing myself through EMDR, through talking about the story. It was at that point where I was able to say and tell other people, like, I really wanted this man to die and go to hell. And now I don't think I do. Like I had to start with, like, I don't think I do. And now I can truthfully say, I mean, it's been years, right? It's been 9 years since that happened. And I can truthfully say, I really hope I never have to see him again. Like, that's my boundary, because I have gone back to the place. I was actually like right by the room that it happened in. The first time I was like, we're not going in that building. I can't do it. I don't want to see him. I mean, I was just like all pent up. But by the time we had gone a couple of more times, I'm like, okay, I can go in the building. It's okay. But just having the understanding, having the the knowledge of the truth of God's word, that he will do what he says he's going to do, that we can trust him and not trust ourselves. I have no trust in myself, because myself wanted him to die and suffer. I wanted him to suffer because that seemed right. And to think about that the Lord was pursuing him in the same way that he pursues me, I was like, whoa, that's not just, Lord. In my mind, that's not just. That's unfair. But there's my pride of like, why am I more worthy of Jesus's love and forgiveness than this other guy? And then, think about Paul and David and all these guys who were like really messing it up. They did some really terrible things, and the Lord's like, I love them so much. I came for them. I came for you and for them. You're the same, and I want the same good for you and for them. And so as we walk into this journey of listening to people's stories, understanding where they're coming from, I also want us to make sure that we are constantly taking things back to the truth, to God's word. When we talk about grief, when we talk about how hard it is that adoption doesn't always go our way, how hard it is to choose to follow what the Lord's called us to do, even when it's really hard and it doesn't make sense, we don't understand. When we choose to grieve those things in a healthy way without hate. And, I think some healthy anger, some biblical anger, there's nothing wrong with that. But the hate in our hearts and the unforgiveness will literally ruin us. It will tear us apart. And then it will ruin everything that we put our hands on and around. And so as we talk in our next few podcasts about people's stories, hearing from them, I truly want us to collectively, as people who are being open to the Lord, just really say, like, Lord, where is my heart in all of this? Where is my heart in my day-to-day, in the things, the people that are ticking me off, and frustrating me because they don't understand who I am. They don't understand, maybe they had a hard morning, but you didn't understand that. You didn't know that. And then they came in and really frustrated you. Or maybe your child, is experiencing something and they can't communicate about it. And it's really frustrating. And, there's all these complex things. Our kids with trauma who are not able to break down the onion and give us all the things. All they have is that outward layer, right? And it's really like 10 layers in. It's causing the outward layer to have the explosive behavior. But how can we take a step back and see the heart like the Lord does? And we're never going to be perfect like he is, but I think he's calling us to not say, well, I just can't do that. I'm just human and I can't do that. He's calling us to say, I am going to try, and I'm going to allow the Lord to help me to try, because I can't do it on my own. And maybe sometimes you don't want to do it on your own, but you can with his strength. He will be there for you and meet your needs. So thanks for listening today. Can't wait for next week. Hope you guys have a great one.